surfing the waves, surfing the crimson wave today.
Hi, my name is Zeba and I'm from Free Periods Canada. I'm inviting you to join our platform Charms, which connects people that are interested in learning more about menstrual health. Here you will find networking and volunteer opportunities. You can filter by location, expertise, and find people to collaborate with. You can also find grant and funding opportunities. Join our growing network to make period care more accessible.
I'd like to start this evening off with a land acknowledgement. My name is Kevin Hebert. I'm the co-founder of Changing the Flow, one of the hosts of this evening's event. And I want to start by acknowledging that Indigenous peoples are the traditional guardians of this land that we call Canada. I believe that a land acknowledgement is an important but small first step for non-Indigenous folks and their organizations to undertake on the journey to true reconciliation. If you're listening and you're not sure where to begin, or you wish to learn more about the land that you're situated on, I recommend you visit native-land.ca, and that link will be in the chat, and you can find out more about the land that you're on. Where I'm situated today is referred to as Waterloo Region in Ontario, Canada, which is located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Waterloo Region is part of the Haldimand Tract, which encompasses 6 miles or 10 kilometers on each side of the Grand River. And today in 2022, Waterloo Region is home to Indigenous people from many distinct First Nations, as well as Métis and Inuit. If you live or work in Waterloo Region, I encourage you particularly to learn about the different organizations that are supporting Indigenous causes, including one that I support personally very strongly, known as Land Back Camp, and you can find out more about them at landbackcamp.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Julia Curran, and I'm the Communications Officer for Days for Girls Canada. Together with Changing the Flow, we're co-hosting the event today. Thank you so much to everyone here for joining us this evening for a special screening of the Academy Award-winning film, Period, End of Sentence. I would like to introduce our moderator tonight, Ella Moore. Ella is a previous ambassador for Menstruation Redefined Laurier, and she's currently in her last year at Laurier, majoring in global studies. Ella is also a first-time author, and her novel, Elements of the Earth, is coming out on January 28th, so keep an eye out. Congratulations on that, Ella, and the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Julia. I'd also like to give another thank you to Changing the Flow, Days for Girls Canada, and the Red Dot Project for organizing this event and being here today. I would also like to let the audience know that you can submit questions for the author, Anita Diamant, for the Q&A after the movie. And now we will be playing a clip of the documentary, Period, End of Sentence, winning an Academy Award.
Yes.
Oh.
Documentary short subject.
That's a good one.
All right.
That's a good one. And the Oscar goes to Period, End of Sentence.
This is the first Oscar nomination for Rika Zitabshi and Melissa Berton.
I'm not crying because I'm on my period or anything. I can't believe a film about menstruation just won an Oscar. Thank you, Netflix, for giving us a platform. Thank you to my creative partners, Sam Davis. I share this with you, baby. Thank you to my mom and my sister. I love you guys. To Lisa Tabak and Garrett Schiff. To Gunit Monga and the women of Katagira, know that you are empowering women all over the world to fight for menstrual equality. This film began because
high school students here and our brave partners at Action India wanted to make a difference, a human rights difference. I share this award with the Feminist Majority Foundation, with Helen, Claire, Avery, Ruby, Sophie, Charlotte, Carly, the entire PAD project team, with the Oakwood School. I share this with teachers and with students around the world. A period should end a sentence, not a girl's education.
So Melissa Berton has many accomplishments. To name a few, she is the executive director and co-founder of the PAD Project, recipient of the 2019 Eleanor Roosevelt Global Women's Rights Award, and Academy Award-winning producer. She is also a lifelong advocate for girls and women, and with her students, she also co-founded the PAD Project, a global nonprofit organization dedicated to the idea that a period should end a sentence, not a girl's education. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Ella, and congratulations to you on your upcoming novel. That's just fantastic. And a huge thank you also to Days for Girls Canada and to Changing the Flow for hosting this event. I'm thrilled to be here today with Anita and to screen the film.
Awesome. So I just have a couple questions for you. So it's kind of a broad one, but if you want to like condense it, I was just wondering, how did the movie get started and what was kind of the process of this all coming together?
So it was really a 5-year journey, I think, from idea to film to Oscar, maybe 7 years till now. So I traveled with, I'm a high school English teacher. In that Oscar moment that you just captured, which still makes me really nervous to look at, the girls that you see coming up on the stage around me were my students. At that point, they were about 20 years old, but when we started this project, they were 16, 17. And we were fortunate enough to be part of an organization called Girls Learn International, which sends young people to the United Nations every year to fight for the rights of women and girls at the United Nations. And there we learned about what is now called period poverty. And at the same time, we learned about the man you'll see in the film, Arun Chinalam Murugan Anthem. I said it, got it in. Anyway, he is the inventor of the sanitary pad making machine. And we learned about those two things at once. And we were determined to raise funds to send a machine to our partner community in India, and also to make a film to document the process.
Okay, awesome. So like, did you think so was it like when you thought in the beginning, we're gonna make this into a movie, this is gonna be an Oscar, we want that to happen? Or did that just kind of?
No, I think in our wildest dreams, we could have never imagined that it would have caught on in that way. What we were hoping is that we were, Girls Learn International, that organization with whom we still partner on so many things, they have a guidebook for students, and we thought maybe we could make a film that would go in the guidebook for Girls Learn International. And what happened was, though, that it got accepted into a film festival, and the reaction at the film festival is very huge. And we began to feel like we were definitely striking a chord with people after after almost a year on the film festival circuit. We could tell that it was the little engine that could.
Awesome. And since the film has been out, have you noticed a change in the topic of menstruation yourself?
I certainly have, with great organizations like Days for Girls, like Red Dot, like Changing the Flow. I mean, this is a movement that began well before us. It's something that's an issue since the beginning of time and is continuing momentum. Just as the most recent example, I don't know, a lot of you are in Canada, but there was recently a horrible fire in the Bronx where I believe 18 people died. I might have the number wrong. Where I'm going with this is that the newscaster said, we are getting all kinds of supplies to the people that died, to the families of the people who passed away. We're getting food, and we're getting sanitary products, menstrual products to the people. That is honestly something I have never heard on just a regular news report post disaster. that's just one example of the new kinds of awareness I think that organizations in the menstrual equity space are now hearing and understanding. It's really heartening. It's really great.
Yeah, awesome. And also just when I saw the video again of you guys like winning the Oscar, what was kind of your feelings like going up on the stage and just being there that day? What was that whole thing like?
I think we were shocked. The women in the film that you'll see when we screen the film were actually able to come to Los Angeles. And so they were there in that little video. When I think Action India, I'm looking up to where I know the people are sitting. It's sort of, I don't know, for people who are Oscar fans or grew up watching the Oscar telecast, and when you think, oh, they knew they were going to win because they're seated close to the podium or close to the microphone. That's actually, you don't know what they do. It's very clever. The producers of the show is that they move people in banks. So they move category. I mean, I think if you're Meryl Streep, you're always in the front row, but barring that, they move each next category to the front. So I was way in the back too, but then 20 minutes before your category is called, they move all nominees right up to the front. So I was on tenterhooks. Our whole team was right till the last minute.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, those are all my questions. So now if we're ready to screen the movie and watch the movie.
Great.
Welcome back, everyone. I think I just saw this in the chat that someone said they've watched it multiple times and still just like goosebumps. I don't know, I've watched a couple times too, and it's just, yeah, it's just such a great feel every time to watch it. Also, just a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions and questions for Anita, please do put them in the chat. All right, so Melissa, would you yourself just like to talk a little bit about Anita and discuss how you both met? I'm getting to some questions afterwards.
Sure. So Anita and I actually have not had the good fortune of meeting in person thanks to COVID, though I feel like we have, and I know we will one day very soon, I think. But how people often ask, how did Anita get involved with the film after the documentary? And the reason is one of those lucky, meant to be moments. So I was meeting with a literary agent in New York after the film, and she said, and we knew I'm not a writer to write this book, but we wanted to capitalize on this momentum of attention to menstrual equity. And she said to me, who do you think? And Anita's name is the first name that came to, in fact, it's the only name that came to my mind. And this person, her name is Binky Urban, and she happened to be Anita's agent. She said, I'm calling Anita tomorrow. And it was just one of those things that was extremely lucky. I was familiar with the red, in my mind, the red tent, and you'd have to, I don't know the age of your panelists, you might have to be of a certain age, but the red tent to my mind was the only book that I remember that even sort of put the idea of menstruation in the zeitgeist. And that's why Anita's name came to me. And then since then, it's just been a great, good fortune. So I'm so excited and lucky.
Amazing. So I'm just gonna talk a bit about Anita for those who don't know. She has many accomplishments, as we have just discussed. She is a novelist, a journalist, an essayist, and the author of 5 good books to contemporary Jewish life. As discussed, Anita's best-known book, The Red Tent, was published in 1997. Her latest book, Period End of Sentence, celebrates a new generation of activists and innovators who are working to end period poverty and stigma, and describe the brave new world of period products, advertising, art, and comedy. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I haven't seen this. It's very moving to see the film again. I haven't seen it since I started working on the book, which is now a long time ago. So it's very moving. It's very powerful, even more. And the music is great. Actually, I don't think I registered that the first time, but it really, it really takes you someplace. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I just have one question for the both of you, and then there's a lot of questions in the chat, and we'll have that too. So how did working together kind of affect your individual advocacy work?
Well, this was all COVID time. So I'm in Boston and Melissa's in Los Angeles. So, and my portfolio is to write sort of a global overview of what menstruation is, what it was, what it should be. And so it started very, very much with the story that was told in the film, and also a story that was told about a very young girl who committed suicide after having been shamed for her period in class. And actually Mandiki, who was one of the producers, did some original reporting, right, Melissa, for the book that I used, and as I used in the book. But I had to sort of go far and wide. So the book refers to menstrual injustice all over the world, and I tried to cast as wide a net as I could. The PAD Project folks were incredibly supportive. Whatever I asked for information, if they could get it for me, emotional support, for starting a book like this, which was a very big project. We had actually talked a little bit about travel, so it was right before we all got locked down. So that wasn't going to happen, and it actually couldn't have happened in a year's time anyway. So it was a year of learning and of partnership for me.
Awesome.
Well said. I wasn't sure if the question was for me as well. So
yeah, everyone too.
Oh, absolutely. We feel so fortunate, and it's just been able to continue the conversation and have it. The movie obviously is set in a very rural village in India, and that story is huge and specific, but the global story is magnified and very huge. And as Anita said, it was a terrific undertaking. So in that way that a very personal, specific story can drive things home, there's also this other piece of what is the story in all places around the world, including, and Anita and I have talked a lot about this in our advocacy work. And one thing that came out of the film and the book is that this issue of stigmatization of menstruation is worldwide. It's everywhere. It's in rich countries as well as developing and much poorer countries. Shaming goes across every strata, and celebrations of periods too are in many different cultures. So there's just so much, and I feel like the book, period, end of sentence, really broadens the conversation and brings so many different perspectives. So it's just wonderful.
Definitely. Okay, so we have a lot of questions here from the chat. So one, how important would you say it is to include men in the dialogue on menstrual equity?
Super important. Super important. And there are a lot of men who are very eager to have this conversation. Their sons and fathers and brothers and spouses and all of that. There are men who are still deeply embarrassed. But as you know, the thing you just said, Melissa, about the newscast talking on the evening news about putting the words menstrual products along with food and clothing is a huge change. So what it has done is put it into the conversation where men, wouldn't have heard about it, wouldn't have talked about it, wouldn't have thought about it. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had conversations over the past couple of years talking to men about why period products should be free, for example, in bathrooms. And the question is always, are you carrying around a roll of toilet paper with you? And it's one of those, yes, of course I'm not. Of course there should be, so you don't have to, there are a lot of folks you don't have to argue with. You just have to bring up the subject. And I have also learned that a lot of younger men in particular, men in their 20s and 30s, are already there in a lot of ways and are supportive of this. It's that I don't want to make too many generalizations, but it's less of a secret. It's less stigmatized to some extent among younger men who have grown up talking to and talking about bodies in a way that didn't happen in the past. We have a lot further to go with this. But one of my favorite stories in the book is about a cab driver in South Africa who in his cab, he would ferry school children back and forth to school, and he noticed bloody tissues in the back seat. And he realized what was going on. And rather than freaking out and saying, oh, I'm not going to pick up girls anymore, he went to the store and he bought pads and he put them on the dashboard of his car for free. Anybody could take them. And if he had boys and girls in the back and the boys started teasing the girls, he stopped them and said, that's not okay. It's not respectful. And he was just a great human being. He was thoughtful. He doesn't have daughters, as he said. He has one son, and he's taught his son how to respect women in all sorts of ways. And he said, I think all cab drivers should do this. I think we should be, and he said, in South Africa, there are free condoms everywhere. There should be free period products everywhere. So that's one of the male heroes in the book.
Awesome.
We need role models, in other words. I think men have to be role models for boys and men about how to get comfortable talking about something that's very basic and very essential.
Definitely. Melissa, did you want to add anything to that? Or?
Wholeheartedly agree. And Kevin here, shout out to him, because I know he is one of those menstrual men heroes. And we've been talking to the PAD Project, has been talking to him for some time, and just men seeing other men and boys speaking up about periods is just huge. It's such an important step in equalizing the playing field.
Definitely.
Somebody just said, yay, Kevin, in the chat.
Kevin's amazing. Okay, second question. How did you find discourse about periods varies in the less developed compared to the more developed world?
That's a huge question. And it would be hard to answer that in any way that didn't slight somebody somewhere. I just want to say that there are activists all over the world, throughout Africa, throughout Southeast Asia, and throughout Europe and North America and Canada, by the way, I think has been ahead in a lot, certainly ahead of the United States in terms of policy. So there's a huge discrepancy. I just want to say one thing though, and Japan supposedly was the first country to provide menstrual leave for women, but it was never, it's on the books. It was on the books, on the history books, but it was never implemented. So just because there's a law, just because I believe it was Kenya mandated that there should be period products in all the schools, but they never funded it. So just because it says someplace that we're doing something doesn't mean it happens. It takes grassroots, it takes people to insist, and it takes people talking about it in public in ways that never were before. So in a way, there are tremendous differences. Of course, poverty and race and your zip code, all of that impacts how menstrual injustice affects people. And it's a very intersectional issue, and it's worse if you are suffering from poverty, for example, or if you're displaced, if you're in a homeless shelter, or if you're incarcerated. All of those things make period injustice that much worse, and that's true whatever nation you're talking about.
Definitely. Did you want to add anything, Melissa? Or?
Wholeheartedly agree. And I know that a sort of touch point for how we began the book in my first conversation with Anita was saying that right after the film flooded with emails, and one of the very first came from a young woman right here where I live in Los Angeles, saying that she has to stuff her underwear with socks because she can't afford period products when she goes to school. So at the PAD Project, this is just stuff we hear from the United States all the time. Lately, we've been sort of preoccupied with not preoccupied, but occupied with a mission for school nurses who we found out most school nurses in the US pay for period products just out of the goodness of their hearts and out of their own pocket money they don't have just because they know that students come to the nurse's office and they need it. And so it's just really still very overlooked. And again, doesn't always matter what country, but access for everyone is essential.
I still, when I was working on the book, my Google alerts, or menstruation was my Google, which I continue to get every single day. And I believe New Brunswick, Canada, recently mandated period products in all the schools. And that's, day after day, I'm reading that, not enough, but Canadian provinces in particular and towns, to, given my, my Google alerts, seem to be pushing this further than other places. And I'm sure, and I know that has to do because of the activism of women and girls, because of the presence of women and girls and their allies in the government, in the state houses in the United States, in the provincial governments in Canada. It doesn't just happen out of the goodness of one person's heart. It comes about because the PAD project has been pushing it, because Days for Girls, for the Red Dot, all of that. It's got a lot of momentum at the moment, and I hope and pray that that we all understand that PADs are important, but PADs are just part of a larger issue about menstrual injustice and misogyny. And it's a great opening, though. It's a great way to talk about this without freaking people out too much, because without menstruation, there is no human life, and no one's going to argue with that. So treating it with respect and seeing it as a health issue is a relatively easy way to get these conversations started. Not easy.
Yeah, takes some time.
It depends, but I've been surprised at the openness that I found. I often assume, because of an age of somebody or their background, that they're gonna freeze up when I tell them what my most recent book was. But it's no longer completely hush hush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely noticed that since joining menstrual organizations and reading into this. I was really from being a kid to now, seeing how much things have changed. It's a really beautiful thing to see that. Okay, question 3. I noticed that the strongest underlying issue seems to be around speaking and shyness. Is there any intentional action planned for educating men about the regularity, normalcy, and natural essence of menstruation cycles, so they also feel comfortable talking about them?
Well, I think education is sort of the big need. I mean, and that means children, and wherever possible in gender inclusive classrooms, so that we have language to talk with one another, so that everybody of any gender understands how the reproductive system works and how menstruation is essential and important and part of health. And that has to happen as much as possible with male teachers teaching boys and girls in the same room, with people with kids who don't quite know which room they belong into, can be in the same room and not have to make a weird choice or out themselves or not learn what they need to know. So education is way up at the top, and boys and girls together in school, men and women together on city councils. We have to get brave and be willing to talk about menstruation. And the fact that someone can talk on the evening news, in local news, about menstrual products, I would have been unheard of 2 years ago, right, Melissa? I mean, I think that it's just it's a little thing, but you noticed it, I would notice it, that that somehow it's not taboo to mention these things on television anymore. Although I have to say, whenever I would do interviews, and I think you had this experience too, Melissa, that people who were interviewing, especially men, would say, boy, they would sort of pat themselves on the back of how brave they were to be talking about a subject that they weren't supposed to talk about. And not all of them, but some of them did. And I'd say, no, it's getting easier for all of us to talk to each other about this subject. So we have a long way to go, but we're on the path. We're on the path.
Yes. Anita, I have a question here for you. Please describe for us the effect working together had on your personally and your commitment to menstrual equity. I was not a menstrual equity activist.
As a journalist, I had written a couple of pieces about sort of some of the horrors that have been visited upon people, especially in Nepal, in some of the rural areas where women have been banished from their homes and sent out into the woods and have died as a result of exposure. And there are a couple of other stories like that. Also a story about a high school girl in my town who wrote an op-ed in her high school newspaper, which turned into city policy in the town of Brookline, Massachusetts, which I think was one of the first towns to institute period products in all municipal buildings. So I had been writing about it and thinking about it, and writing about women's issues is kind of my thing as a journalist. And so it wasn't a big stretch to write about this as a feminist and someone who believes in human justice. This was fine. And it was a project that spoke to me, so I said yes. I still do a lot of talking about this, but I don't feel that I'm on the same level as folks who are spending all of their time, all of their days working on this. I'm a mouthpiece.
Another question here for you, got a couple more. How did writing this book compare to your other novels and nonfiction books?
Well, nonfiction and fiction are very different animals. Nonfiction is easier in a lot of ways because there's a kind of word count and how long it's going to be and what it has to cover. This one was tough because it was too big a topic to cover in the course of 9 months or so, which I had to write it in, or about a year. So there was a lot of winnowing down and trying to decide how to organize it. It was a great challenge, and I complained a lot about it because that's what you do when you're a writer. But I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to get deep into it. I learned so much. That's the great thing about writing altogether for me, is how much I learn about things that I would have never had access to. And I actually I had encounters with people in different countries. I had wonderful correspondence with a woman in New Zealand of a Maori background, and learning about her culture and what she's doing to bring the traditional and very celebratory attitudes towards menstruation, especially first menstruations, into the 21st century, and making it accessible and attractive to young Maori women who are menstruating for the first time, and making it present in their lives, not to do something just because it used to be done in the past, but sort of reclaiming this tradition that was really robbed by settlers and by white people coming and saying this is disgusting and you can't do this anymore, and going back and reclaiming this. And she's an activist, she's an academic, and I feel like I have a friend in New Zealand, although it was all email and exchanging books, and but I consider her my teacher. So,
nice. What surprised you the most as you wrote the book?
Lots of things. The business of menstruation surprised me. It's an enormous, booming business. A lot of it by women creating new products. I mean, you actually get to see a very basic version of that in this movie, and how it empowered the women to have money and to have agency and feel a kind of self-respect, to be able to give her brother gifts instead of her brother giving them to her, for their parents to be proud of them, around a business, around this menstrual business. And that's happening all over the world. I thought that was interesting. There were heartbreaking things too, which I kind of knew. I mean, the suffering caused by institutional racism around menstrual issues was shocking, not surprising, but shocking. The lack of information that we all have about our bodies, including some physicians as well, was surprising and shocking. But the thing that made me the happiest was the fact that I'm talking to you and that we are talking with one another, and that young people, especially young women, but also young men, are the drivers of this issue, just as young people are drivers of the climate change issue, gun violence in the United States, and on and on. So I feel very hopeful in this regard and I'm also hopeful that by the experience of working on this issue, that people will be inspired to continue their activism for justice in all kinds of ways.
Definitely. Thank you. What kinds of policy changes do you think we need to see in order to provide better menstrual equity for the transgender community? Thanks so much to the organizers for putting on this wonderful event.
Well, products need to be everywhere, for one thing, in all bathrooms, in men's rooms and women's rooms and all gender bathrooms. And this is a fight. This is an encounter that's taking place, especially on college campuses, where mostly young women have been demanding that there be period products in the bathrooms. And in some places, they're demanding they be in all of the bathrooms. And this can be a bone of contention, but it's part of the conversation. And the trans community has certainly brought this forward. And I'm very pleased to say that I think the menstrual movement has embraced this as an issue, as their issue as well. Not all women menstruate, and not all menstruators are women. And in the book, I use the word menstruator on and off with women and girls. I think this is a gendered issue, but I also know that it's not only a gendered issue. So the word menstruator has entered the language and will continue to be used and gain more acceptance. So we have a big cultural shift to make here, and to be inclusive of people who have periods who don't identify as female, and also to make products accessible to everybody, including in the drugstores. So where the aisle where all the period products are called period products and not feminine hygiene. That really drives me nuts. Like, feminine is one problem, hygiene is another. This is not something dirty. This is something you need to take care of the way, it's not nasal hygiene when you go to the tissue aisle.
Definitely. Have you seen any cause and effects over the time of research to publishing, the need and demand versus cultural unawareness or resistance?
I'm not sure what that means. There have been several books, certainly, about menstruation prior to this in the last few years. I think our book is the most, takes the highest, it's from on high. It's not just about laws. It's not just about products in schools. It's not just about education. It's about the sort of the global concern about menstruation and its history, and how we can change things in our culture as well as in our laws. So, and there will be more, there are more. There are books coming out a lot in England and in the British Isles about this topic. And magazine, again, my Google alerts, magazine articles and newspaper stories about this are everywhere. Sometimes it feels like, there's like 15 in a week. And then the COVID thing has been the big thing about menstruation. And there's been research that proves that the impact of COVID vaccine on menstruation is, it does have an impact. It might have an extra day, but it's minimal and it stops. So it's not it became kind of a warning bell and a kind of concern that this was going to have lasting impacts on menstruation. But again, the fact that menstruation became part of the COVID conversation speaks to the fact that women are in particular, willing to talk about their concerns, their health concerns, and they demand answers. And they've been getting them because studies have been done. So that's a big shift as well. There's a lot of research that still needs to be done about how we menstruate, about treatments for dysmenorrhea and other problems. So, the medical world has still got a lot of catching up to do as well.
Definitely, yeah. Melissa, this question is for you. What other countries is the PAD project already planning to go to?
So the PAD project is already in 13 now different countries and counting. If you are interested, you could go to www.thepadproject.org and look at our partners. So, and I thought I spied another kind of question that I could just answer now about the kinds of pads. So is it just disposable pads? And there's also something called a washable, reusable pad, which is eco-friendly so that you can wash the pad and reuse it. And I believe I spied something in a question. Why wouldn't that be a solution in India? And the reason is because the climate isn't dry enough to support drying that. Also, some other countries, and by the way, at the Pad Project, we love washable pads. We love disposable pads from Pad Machines. We love all products, all takers. So, but in order for washable pads to be used, you need a dry climate, and you also need a culturally accepting community where a woman or a girl is not going to be ashamed of pads drying on a line. Also clean water to wash them. So just answering that question. But
again, so that intersectional thing happens. Menstrual justice requires clean water and access to safe bathrooms, and also ways to dispose of pads and of human waste as well that are climate sensitive and culture sensitive. So it's wrapped around all of human culture in so many different ways, and the product universe includes cups and underwear and things that and discs for to take care of menstruation that weren't around in the past, and the prices of those are coming down. And again, that's good. The more the better. Cups are not very welcome in some cultures where the families are just not comfortable with inserting a device, although it has nothing to do with virginity, but it's not an argument you need to have. So it's all of those things together. Pads are part of it, really important part of it. And again, I think it's the great wedge issue to start talking about. Do you have a safe place to change your pad at night? It's such a real nightmare for people in refugee camps. Can you imagine? No locks on the doors, women being attacked on the way to the bathroom to change their pads, to go to the bathroom. So it's a bigger issue than if you just start thinking about, collecting pads for the homeless shelter down the block, which is a great thing to do and a great way to start and something everyone should do all the time. If you follow it further, you see how it connects to climate issues, gender issues, medical issues, the ills of our societies.
Definitely, yeah. Another question here. What did writing the book and creating the film teach you about periods that you didn't know before?
Everything. I learned something every day, and it started with the film. I had some knowledge of it before, but the film started me on a path that, and this project started me on a path that it was all news to me on some level. It wasn't always surprising, but I didn't know 90% of what is in that book before I started. So.
Yeah, same. I think just the amount of stories, that the sheer volume is maybe what surprised me the most. Anita knows that because I told her, and she shares the story in the introduction to her book. But after the film came out, the avalanche of individual stories, people wanting period supplies, people wanting pad machines for their communities, people wanting to share their stories of discrimination on account of their periods, people wanting to talk about how they have advocated in their own community or whatever the case was. The amount of intense passion, need, outcry, anger, sadness, pride if they had done something in the activist world. So I think that to me remains kind of surprising, but though not surprising when you think that, half the population is at some point going to experience menstruation.
The other big thing that I got to see a lot of those emails, which were overwhelming, but there was a lot of people who wanted to donate, who wanted to make sure that they wanted to do something immediately in response to it, which I thought was also really nice. And one of those letters, which I remember, was a high school student in North Carolina who wanted to show the film, and with her, I don't remember which club it was, but it was a mixed gender club, and then they were going to go and talk to their state legislature. I mean, she was already there.
Yeah,
The movie awesome. Was going. So, and I wonder, we should follow up and see where I'm sure she's in college by now, but probably taking over the Women's Center in the college. So, yeah, so the outpouring of anger, passion, and also determination to do something right away. I want to do this. I want to give. I want to be part of this. It's great.
Awesome. Thanks. I just kind of have my own question here. I think you can kind of being involved in the conversation, organizations, you can feel like a loss of hope at times with the way it's received. What would you kind of say to people who kind of like feel a loss of hope to like kind of keep going and not give up?
There's so many, you have to remember you're not alone in this, that you have to step back and look at all of the organizations. I mean, I tried to list a bunch of them, and there were way too many organizations in many towns all over the United States, all over the world. And it's not going back in the closet. It's just not. And we are part of a large, unorganized in some ways, lots of organizations, but we don't all know what each other are doing. And the fact that it's powered by young folks also. I mean, and you got to remember where we started. And that's sort of the downside of being young about this, because it used to be really bad, and not so long ago. Not your moms can tell you stories if they want to. What they went through, and whenever I start talking to people, people immediately start talking about what was your first period story like, and people have terrible stories, people have sweet stories, people have, like me, no memory. So I don't know what that means, but it's just a part of life, and it's part of the conversation. So, and it didn't used to be. You have to remember, it didn't used to be. And so also sign up for your Google alerts on menstruation, and you'll have at least a finger on some of the pulse, some of the conversations. A lot in India, lots of men in India too, writing about this all of the time. So it will make you feel better to see that you're part of an international conversation and effort. And I hope that would help make you feel a little less alone. I think it's lonely, right? I think there's that, it's just us, but it's not just you.
Definitely. Did you want to add? Oh, sorry. I just want to ask Melissa if you just want to add anything.
I would say that if there are times that you are feeling without hope, that it's okay to step away for a beat, or for however long you need, and probably you will come back. There's sometimes we do get the worst of the worst stories, I think, just at the PAD project, people writing to us because they have traded their bodies for pads. Just some horrible stories, encounters on the way to unsafe bathrooms while they're having their period, this sort of thing. But as Anita said, just knowing that by starting to talk about it and reaching out to other activists, organizations, or even just, talking to friends and family, it's not like you have to, be full. This doesn't have to be your cause, but I think just being open and talking about it and listening can feel rejuvenating,
And one thing everybody asks, what can I do? There's so much you can do, but one thing I tell everybody to do is to put period products out on the vanity in your bathrooms at home. Even if nobody in your family is going to use them, by putting them out and making it public, you're reminding folks that this belongs on the counter just as much as soap and water and towels and toilet paper, so that this should be part of our landscapes. And if you're part of a school community or a church or a synagogue community, are there period products in the bathrooms? And so many times when I've suggested that to people, men and women, they go, of course, why? I'm embarrassed that we don't. They're embarrassed to think that they haven't already thought of that. And they immediately, it's not a big thing to do, but it's a big thing to do. So, and yeah, I think Melissa's talk about taking a beat sometimes, you have to take care of yourself. We have to take care of each other.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for the questions. I'm just like internally fangirling over here. This has just been awesome. I think that was all the questions that we had. So I think, Kevin, you had some announcements that you wanted to make.
I do. I guess I will just start. Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much, Ella, Melissa, and Anita. That was just, oh my God. I was in close to tears a few times listening, and then I decided I better start just, living back in the moment, because I was just experiencing a lot of it. And my God, Anita, the last piece in particular that she said about putting period products on out in washrooms, that touched me a lot, because through my own journey of menstrual equity and learning different things that I can do to be supportive to all people who menstruate. One of the things was how, even with being active in menstrual equity work and being with a super supportive spouse and super supportive daughters of mine, and being basically completely immersed in all these things, it was only maybe 15, 16 months ago, somewhere in the pandemic, that we in our own personal household put them out. And it took some coaxing, because it just was so, I'm closer to Anita's generation than the younger generations. So it was like, yeah, we should do that, but yet we don't do that. And but now, I mean, I'm very, very pleased that every washroom in our house has period products out. I stock them just like I stock toilet paper. I love stocking toilet paper. That's another story, but it's just, it's just like, you get your supplies and it's a routine. It's just they come out of there's where they are, and you put them here and you put them here. And I loved that what Anita touched on about, it doesn't matter if anybody in your house menstruates or not. It's somebody will be in the house, they'll see it, and they'll start making some connections, and off we go. So yes, I want to thank both of you, Melissa and Anita, so much. And just very quickly, I'm going to try and do two things at once, which is share my screen and talk. So good luck to me. But here is, I believe I'm showing a flyer for a February 5th event. If I'm not, somebody stop me. But this is an upcoming event that you can sign up for, that's put on by one of our many great menstrual equity partners in across Canada, the Seroptimus Group of Western Canada region. Period Poverty and Public Policy, What Next? They have a fantastic panel of speakers, and they'll be screening Pandora's Box, Lifting the Lid on Menstruation. So that's happening Feb 5th, and you can register on Eventbrite. We will make sure to put the link in the chat, because I'm going to move this off the screen now. And I want to tell you about another event, if I can. There we go. This one, Monday, February 7th, is put on by our partners at Red Dot Project, Empowering Action in Menstruation. And details for registration will be announced soon. So make sure to follow Red Dot Project Toronto on Instagram. They will be announcing details on how you can register for it. And I can promise you it's going to be a great event. I was lucky to attend a December event that they put on, and my goodness, just fantastic stuff. So that is two events to look forward to. We're going to announce at the end of, before you leave for tonight, we're going to announce the winners of some books of Anita's. We've bumped it up to 3 from 2 because we're super excited. And we'll also tell you about our next event under the Share the Platform banner, which is the collaborative work of Changing the Flow, Days for Girls Canada, Red Dot Project. And you'll be able to register right away for that. And we'd encourage you to do so. Stick around in a few minutes. We'll share that. And very quickly, for anybody that is thinking about, okay, what can I do now, and how does this affect me? And I want to get period products in my workplace, in my, or in any public spaces. What can I do? There are some things that we can do as an organization at Changing the Flow. So I do want to encourage you to reach out if you think that that is something that we can talk to you about. On one level, it's working to identify needs of organizations like municipalities and school boards that need to implement broader menstrual equity strategies, figuring out how to do that around education and awareness. And as well as smaller organizations that can move much quicker in some cases and put period products in their washrooms. And that can be, think of places like dental clinics, union halls, massage therapists, your home, really anywhere there's a washroom. There's toilet paper, there should be period products. That's our view. That's our part of our mission and our vision for Canada, that every single washroom have period products in it by 2030. We'd love to help you with those things. Reach out. Another thing you can do is you can keep coming to events like this, or you can ask us how we can bring events like this to your organization. So I think that's what I have to say about that. And I'm going to bring Ella back, who's going to work with a very cool wheel that we have to draw some names.
So Jeannie, you have a book for period end of sentence. Congratulations. Is it Ange? You also have a book as well. Kevin is showing it there. And Tracy, you have a book as well. Congrats, guys. Alrighty, so once again, I'd just like to thank Anita and Melissa. This was such an inspiring and amazing night, and I'm glad you guys were here and able to answer questions and everything. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone here learned a lot too. So thank you so much for doing that, and I'll invite Julia back.
Thanks, Ella. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, please consider registering for our next Changing the Flow and Days for Girls Canada event on March 8th. There will be more details about that event soon, but for now you can get your early birdie tickets at the link that will be put in the chat right now. And now I would like to say thank you to our wonderful moderator, Ella. We really appreciate you being here tonight, and congratulations again on your book coming out soon. Also, thank you to all of our attendees for joining us in watching this amazing and emotional film tonight and creating great conversation with our special guests, Anita and Melissa. The Share the Platform video will now play to end off this event, and we will be available in the chat if anyone wants to stick around and ask questions. Thank you.
That time of the month, well, I woke up early and I got a hunch, gonna head on down to the beach today, surf all my girl props away, 'cause all I wanna do is cry, ask Mother Nature why, listen to the cramps on my stereo, turn it up as loud as it will go, surfing the wave, all the girls are surfing the wave, surfing the crimson wave today. Gonna call in sick to work, I don't care, my boss is a jerk, can't believe all the pain I'm in, give me white wine and bike again, call my girls, see if they wanna go, take their minds off from that flow, so it's gonna let her on my bathing suit, 'cause I've got sharks in hot pursuit, surfing the wave, all the girls are surfing the wave, surfing the crimson wave today. Surfing the wave, all the girls are surfing the wave, surfing the crimson wave today. There are communists in the summer house, there are communists in the summer house.
Hi, my name is Zeba and I'm from Free Periods Canada. I'm inviting you to join our platform Charms, which connects people that are interested in learning more about menstrual health. Here you will find networking and volunteer opportunities. You can filter by location, expertise, and find people to collaborate with. You can also find grant and funding opportunities. Join our growing network to make period care more accessible.